we didn't talk about fisting in the podcast.
We are now. Well, hello there, Mr. Gary.
Hi there, Blair.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Well, we are back for season 2 of the Phat Games podcast. Imagine that. We're actually crazy and stupid enough to do this again.
Yeah, we are definitely crazy and stupid to do this again, but whatever. We're doing it.
Yep, and we actually wanted to talk a little bit about MegFest before we get started.
Yes,
Gary,
MegFest was fun.
Yeah, Gary and I were there. We got off the wait list and we set up first weekend January it was, I think, and nobody got COVID, so that's great. It was the first time I think we've done anything like I haven't really gone on a real vacation during COVID. I found that weekend very rejuvenating and very positive with respect to the game. The response to the game was very, I would say, overwhelming. A lot of positive feedback.
Yeah, we didn't have any technical problems at all.
Oh yeah, we had tons of technical problems and tons of bugs were found too. That part wasn't so great, but overall, everyone is sort of forgiving about the technical issues. And they just really sat there and played through a large chunk of the game. That one guy played through the entire thing. Was out there for like almost 2 hours. That's incredible. That was an incredible feeling to see that. And the response to the jokes in the game were really heartwarming too, because that it was very
too
validating.
Bad that you didn't get to see that one guy that was he was really laughing at everything.
Yeah,
especially
I wish
the
I was
fisting
there.
Joke that you made in the menus. he almost lost it.
Yeah, that fisting joke actually is pretty lined up with what we're going to be talking about this podcast.
Yeah, lined up. Too bad we didn't talk about fisting in the podcast.
We are now.
Oh yeah, okay. Episode 2.
Maybe. Jeez.
Way of the fist.
I don't know what to make of this episode. So in this episode, we brought back Red Vonix to talk about porno games. He worked on them for a little while in his career with the theme of trying to sort of find your audience. We had to try to have a good understanding of who plays these games, who creates these games, and what kind of overlap there is with indie and AAA game development. And my God, we went off rails so many times, but it was a fun ride. So I hope everyone who's listening enjoys this episode. It's fun to be back. And please be sure to hit like and subscribe to stick around. Welcome back, Red. Thanks for joining us. How you been?
Me? I've been busy. It's been really busy. Honestly, getting games going, getting life going, having cats. Too many cats. In fact, one's about to join me here.
Oh, that's good. It's always nice to have a cat up here on the podcast. Oh, hello. So,
where's your cat, Blair?
Well, I'm not at home. I'm at Gumbo. So I'm sitting in Gumbo's phone booth. And that's why we've got the fancy Kids at Karendow Zoom backgrounds. So, Red, why don't you start by telling everyone about yourself just real quick before we get into our exciting topic of today.
Sure. So I'm a professional game developer. Been doing this for about 21 years now. I've run technically 3 small studios. I've worked with numerous companies and brands throughout the years, shipped somewhere around 40 plus titles. And I'm still around even with how fun the game industry can be.
You're getting really good at your elevator pitch, I'll say that. So we'll get right into it. Last time we had you on, we talked about porn games a little bit, not much, and I kind of wanted to come back and revisit this. So it is such a fascinating thing that exists, I would say. I mean, I guess it's not surprising that such a thing does exist. I find it fascinating, and I don't know why, and it probably makes me sound perverted, but that's fine.
Hey, have you ever played a porn game, Blair?
I have. There was these Atari games, like they were made just for an Atari emulator, and they're like two colors, and you were a naked dude running away from circumcision tools. And then at the end of the level, you had sex with a chick.
Dude, I can't tell if you're being serious right now.
I am dead serious.
That sounds like the porn games of the Atari.
Where the hell did you find this game?
Phil found it. I can't remember where we got it. I was like,
of course it was Phil.
Well, there's a whole company that used to make them for the Atari. So there's a bunch
really?
of them back then, yeah.
Wow, that's hilarious and awesome, I guess.
Well, the content of them was a little antithesis of woke, but
well, it was Atari and it was a different era too. So
yeah, it was the 70s, what 80s.
It's hilarious. So Red, I wanted to explore for a little while who makes these games and why. Why do porn games exist?
So let's start with the who, and the who is going to be basically everyone. Almost everyone I know in games has either wanted to work on porn games or has in some capacity. And that kind of goes into the why that, you know, we're all sexual beings. Everyone has the parts and the instinctual desire, and sure, asexual people may not, but for everybody else, that's there. And as a result, people like sex. But yeah, everyone enjoys it. And for the most part, even if they publicly say, oh no, that's bad, I don't enjoy that, they're also the kinky fuckers back in their bedroom with like a rack full of torture equipment.
Hey, that sounds like a good time, right? Okay, so here's what I don't get. So people want to make porn games. I assume that, well, do people just want to make porn too in general? Is there underlying desire there?
I found no. A lot of people don't want to actually make porn, but they like the idea of creating an interactive experience, especially people that just like making entertainment in general. They, again, in my experience, they like making different kinds of entertainment, and one of those is finding fun ways to make porn games, especially because so many porn games in the past, as you may have seen, are basically let's insert tab A into slot B and repeat that until the level's over, and that gets to be pretty damn boring. So people are always trying to find, you know, what's a fun way we can do porn games that's actually interesting. I just realized my shirt is like way up. I'm Italian, you got to keep that low. But yeah, that's basically, again, this is my experience, but what I've seen.
So, okay, do you get embarrassed a little bit? So when I do all the, like, Kids of Karendow has some raunchy stuff in it a little bit, some dirty jokes, that kind of stuff. I am fine when I'm sitting on my computer at home, writing that, animating it, stringing it all together, whatever. But as soon as I get it in front of people at an expo and they experience it, I get extremely embarrassed. It's not that I'm ashamed of anything I've created, but the first time I see someone react to it, it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that or wrote that dirty joke or whatever. Do people who make porn games, do they feel shame?
Yeah, a lot of people do feel guilt over it, but in reality, in my opinion, they don't need to. It's nothing to really feel guilty about if you're making someone laugh. You're doing your job as an entertainer.
So what did you specifically do when you're working on Bone Town?
So in Bone Town, they actually brought me into the game after they had finished it. They needed a torque expert to work on the Xbox 360 controller implementation. So they gave me a free copy of the game, and I played through the entire thing in like 3 days. And I'm like, okay, it's not that bad. It's a little problematic at points in the, you know, woke sector. But aside from that, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a game from the aughts. It's not terrible. It's literally what it says it is. It was the first porn game that was actually also a game, which, yeah, the entirety of Japan could argue that, but we'll get to that later. So they brought me in to do the Xbox 360 controller implementation, and then I also kind of pitched while I was there that from playing through the game, it could desperately use some tutorials. So I also worked with them to write a tutorial system, which they ended up not using. But it was pretty cool because it actually mimicked a lot of the tutorials of other games at the time, where it'd be like you'd get somewhere and a tutorial would happen based on events and things. So it was very integrated. It was nice.
Okay,
I
so
like
it's
it.
like
What's a torque expert? Is that another porn game?
Depends how you look at it. Torque was a game engine from the 2000s, the aughts, that was kind of the unity of the day, and it was what everybody used. And I was basically an expert in it, and did everything in C++ on the engine level. And they hired me to do some work at times. And they also had like their group, what they called, I forget what they call them. They're basically ambassadors, and they had like 80 of them around the world, and they made me one of them. So yeah, I was pretty much one of the torque experts in the world. But then
cool.
Unity happened.
And all the porn games now are probably made in Unity Unreal.
They actually are.
I'm not surprised. So last time you mentioned when we were talking about this, that the porn games had become more actual games and not just cheesy like Atari characters getting chased by circumcision tools. So what is that? I've never played a porn game in my life. So I should have done more research before this. I should have gone and played some. I did read some articles on them. So
I can recommend some to you.
Go for it.
But like right now?
Yeah, why not?
Sure. Well, oh, pardon my. I just moved into this apartment, so literally I'm sleeping on like the floor right now. So that's why it's all blurred. You can't see my fingers or anything. Anyway, I will admit some of the more recent ones I'm not as familiar with, but I know they've gotten only crazier these days. But I know there's the Dragon Knight series, I think it was called, which is mostly from the 90s. And there's actually, these are Japanese games. And I remember the one I played the most was Dragon Knight 3. And Dragon Knight 3 in a lot of ways rivaled like some Final Fantasies in terms of its gameplay and depth. And it was a full JRPG, but there'd also just be times, you'd be balls deep in some hot anime girl. Aside from that, it was a really true to life JRPG.
Do you think we'll ever see these games on consoles?
Honestly, I think the day is coming. 10 years ago, if you'd asked me if Steam would have ever had porn games, I would have laughed and said, fuck no. And now we have porn games on Steam because Valve kind of took a step back and like, oh, hold up. We're kind of by blocking these, that's not good, especially because a lot of people have been discovering that when companies block adult entertainment, it's usually to hate on women or something around that, or to control women. It's a really deep topic that is hard for me to properly get into, but there's a lot of resources online. And yeah, basically the TLDR is that when a company is like, oh, we can't have porn, it's bad. It's to either hate on women or to be against sex workers.
Sounds like there might actually be a part 2 to this podcast then.
I got to do some research then because I don't have all the talking points for these. But when Valve kind of opened up their eyes, they're like, "Oh shit, we got to do better. Yeah, let's allow porn games." So they did, and now what they did, that means also technically the Steam Deck does. Now we have a mobile game console. Also, I'd love a Steam Deck if anybody wants to gift me one.
So would I.
I still can't even get a dev kit. I've been trying since literally I put my request up a minute after the dev kit request went up. It says still in review. But regardless, that means we do now have a handheld game console, which the Steam Deck essentially is, that supports porn games. That's going to create a precedence. So I think over time we might see a change of things, especially as we get a change in the generations, where the current generation of people generally our age, many of us sadly are still, oh no, porn is naughty, we can't do that. It would scare the cloud people. But a lot of people younger than us, they're like, fuck that, we don't believe in any of that bullshit, we're just here for the real world. And they're much more accepting of all this, much more accepting of sex workers, much more accepting of just who people are in general in many ways. So I think in the future, yes, we will see porn games on consoles. It just might be another 10 or 15 years or more.
That's really interesting. Now I'm going to get a little bit into who plays them and why we make them, but let's like the overlap between something like a porn game and then one of those dating sims, or several. There's tons of dating sims now that exist, and I feel like when we get into who plays them, I feel like, and I have no data to prove this, or just what I feel like is right. women are probably more into the dating sims, and the guys are probably just more into the porn.
Yeah, that is somewhat true. Oh, a second, I think I'm gonna sneeze.
No
Trying to give you a
problem.
time gap. Maybe
They'll
not.
come back.
You sucked it back in.
Okay, time
Is that
gap.
another porn game?
What's that?
Is that another porn game? Suck it back in?
I'm sure it is.
Oh yeah.
Okay, three.
Well, now it's gonna exist. It's gonna exist now.
Yep. Yeah, maybe we'll make it. Okay, 3, 2.
We're not editing. Don't worry.
You're not editing.
I can
I hope
edit
you
this part
edit
if
the
you really
final
want me to.
thing. I'm trying to
yeah,
give you time
yeah.
gaps. I'm trying to be snorting snot here.
We can't hear you, so it's kind of funny, but we'll see. Anyway,
What's the question?
so was I don't think I've asked it yet. So with is there going to be like kind of an evolution to the dating sims and porn games, or do those already exist and I just don't know about it?
I think they already exist.
So you're just gonna go, you're gonna meet someone, you're gonna court them on a video game, and then you're gonna go to Pound Town.
And not only that, but a lot of these games now support, and the term's escaping me, but they're basically, like mechanical fleshlights and things. So you can be playing these games and the games actually have work with the SDK for these mechanical devices.
Isn't that just gonna like what VR porn's gonna?
Yeah, they're called peripherals. It'll just in the future, it'll just be like getting a keyboard.
Pretty much, yeah. So you'll just be sitting here working away, playing the porn game off to the side, and then, oh, here we go. It's business time.
So that'll bring the realism of the VR porn.
Indeed.
Well, we all have something to be excited for then.
We do indeed.